Thank you to everyone who's joining us from wherever you are for what I think is going to be a really important conversation. I can tell you right now, you're never going to get a chance to interact with a group like this ever again in your life. So enjoy it and take advantage of it and send us your questions and let's make this a great conversation. So we're living in stressful times, that's for sure. COVID and I think the questions being asked about our society and race right now are creating a lot of stress in our lives. And I would argue that this is good stress in some ways, and it's going to take us to a better place. But on the other hand, there's some bad stress out there too. And, I just want to acknowledge that and say that it's something that we all have to work on. In today's conversation, though, we're going to take it to a slightly different place, which is really talking about stress in the LGBTQ plus community and kind of exploring the additional stressors that people in stigmatized minorities deal with. And, kind of make that the conversation of the day. And we're going to talk about what that means for people in the community, what that means for people around, and those who just want to learn. So I think it's going to be a great conversation, and there really couldn't be a better time. So really quickly, my name is Barton Warner. I'm the CEO and founder of this company called R3SET that is here to make stress less stressful. We actually believe that there's an important role for stress in life, and that without stress, life would be pretty boring, and that it actually pushes us to do great things in life. But at the same time, we also think there's a dark side to stress. There's a sinister kind of frenemy relationship we have, and that we need to get better at managing it. And so that's what our company does. We've launched some amazing products in CVS and Target and Amazon, and on our website, r3set.com with a free r3set.com. I'm going to stop selling because I said I wouldn't sell, but they are great. So please check us out when you have a chance. So I said we've got some amazing human beings in our virtual room today, and I'm totally right about that. So I will do a quick intro to the people that are in the room, and then we're going to get into a great discussion. So I'm going to start with Dr. Amelia Aldao, who is a member of the R3SET Scientific Advistory Board. I'm now going to talk about 3 Ivy League schools in one resume, which is terrifying to me. But she is a licensed clinical psychologist who did her PhD at Yale, her undergrad at Penn, and she's a visiting scholar at Columbia. So, I mean, that's pretty awesome. So that's Amelia. And what she brings to this conversation is not just her, overall understanding of psychology, but she's a gay woman, she's from Argentina, and she has particular interests in the field of stress management. And if you've been on prior webinars, you've seen Amelia before. So welcome back, Amelia. I also want to introduce Emil Wilbekin. Emil is a founder of Native Son, which is a platform designed to inspire and empower gay Black men. And now I'm going to read a bunch of impressive things. So he served as chief content advisor at Afropunk, editor-at-large at Essence, managing editor of Essence.com, editor-in-chief of Giant. And if that wasn't enough, he was editorial director and vice president of Vibe Ventures and editor-in-chief of Vibe Magazine at the time that Vibe won the National Magazine Award for General Excellence. He has a Bachelor of Science from Hampton University and another Columbian, a master's from Columbia in journalism. So welcome, Emil. She's getting a lot of claps. Jade Fox. Jade is a content creator, comedian, and the CEO of the Hill Fox Agency, a consulting group. But what she's best known for is being really, really funny on YouTube and other lifestyle channels. She focuses on LGBT culture and basically just comedy in general. Her stuff on introversion is my personal favorite. It really made me laugh. She's been featured in Paper Magazine, Vice, and Bustle. And I do recommend checking out her YouTube channel, but when you do it, please carve out an afternoon because you will probably be stuck there for a while listening because it's pretty addictive.
Thanks.
So Corey Ray. Corey Ray is an activist an actress, a consultant, a model, a producer, a public speaker, and a writer, who has an amazing kind of life experience. She started her transition from male to female at the age of 15, and she became the world's first openly transgender woman to win the title of prom queen in 2010. And since then, she's done, amazing work across a number of platforms to really shed positive light on the transgender experience. And as I was telling the guys, she did a really funny thing on IG last night, all about gay Mad Libs, and it had me in stitches. So check her out. She's amazing. So that's an awesome group of people, and we're going to get to know everyone, and we're going to really explore this topic and put a personal kind of spin on it, and hopefully really come away from today with things we can do in our lives to make stress what it should be, which is helpful. Now, before we get into kind of hearing from people, I want us all just to put our nerd self into the room. We're going to do a little exploration, a little, not too much, but just a little taste of what social science is telling us about stress in the LGBTQ community. This will make you really clever at dinner parties. So think about it that way. You can just whip this out and say, yeah, well, that's not what I learned. So to do that, I'm going to ask Amelia just to give us like 5 minutes on this whole thing about stress in the LGBT community, which has now been researched for really a couple decades. And so what do we know? And when people talk about this label, minority stress, what does that mean?
So, all right, I'll get us started, and feel free, everyone else, please, to chime in. So I'll keep it simple. There's a few things that I think are very important for us to think about when we think of stress. So stress in general first. Like Barton was saying, stress in itself, right, is not a bad thing. And I know this might sound controversial or, weird, because we tend to think of fighting stress. But the reality is that when we look at the science and we look at how our bodies work and how our minds work, actually stress is not bad. There is a right amount of stress that is perfectly helpful for all of us. So for example, if you're not stressed at all about getting a good job, or about getting a good grade on an exam, or about getting a particular person to like you, you might not be very motivated to actually go and do the things you need to do. You might not be motivated to stay up at night and study. You might not be motivated to prep questions for your job interview. The problem is that most of the time, most of us actually get it wrong and we overdo it, right? We stay up too many nights, or we procrastinate too much, or we get too much in our heads. So when we talk about stress, or when we talk about anxiety, really from psychology and from emotion science, the most important thing really is to learn how to get that right level of stress. That stress that is motivating enough, that can get us going, but not too intense that it actually blocks us, that prevents us from doing things that we want to do. So there's this inverted U shape that's called the Yerkes-Dodson law. And again, I'm sorry, I'm getting super technical, but that's basically it. And that's the idea that we all need to find that space. The thing that makes it a little bit more challenging is that there's not just one level of stress that is good for any one of us for all circumstances, right? It really depends on context. So in some situations, you might need to increase your stress level. In other situations, you might need to decrease it. In other situations, you might need to refocus. Maybe you're stressed out about the wrong thing in that situation. So that in general is sort of like the big struggle with stress. It's not so much about making it go away, but actually finding the optimal level. And in the work that I've done with my clients as a therapist and also as a researcher, it's challenging because we don't know a priori what that level is going to be, and it requires exploration and time. So that's kind of like my little spiel on stress. And then, if we sort of take that and we apply it to the idea of minority stress, there's a lot that has been written on it. There are many theoretical models, lots of psychological studies, also sociological studies. So I'll try to keep it really, 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 really simple. But the basic idea, right, is that we all have stressors as people. But then we have different identities, right, that for various reasons are marginalized, right? And in this case, we're talking about the LGBT community. And obviously there's intersectionality, and many of us have many identities that unfortunately are, marginalized in many different ways. So what happens is when you're a member of a minority, you, in addition to the stress that you have as, a daughter, a son, a friend, a worker, you also have that additional layer of stress because you are part of a given community or because you have a particular identity, right? And that creates sort of like a two-level perspective on stress that makes it more complicated, because when we're thinking about regulating and finding the right level of stress, now at any given time we have sort of like two levels of stress that we need to figure out, right? The stress that you have as a person and the stress that you have as a member of a given community. And not to ramble too much, I promise I'll keep it short, but specifically when we talk about LGBTQ minority stress, we can think of structural stressors, right? So do you live in a state that doesn't have protections for LGBTQ employees, right? Or many years ago, do you live in a state that didn't have gay marriage, right? Or that didn't have different laws and protections for gender identity, right? So there's all that structural level of stress that you really can't control, right? As an individual. I mean, yeah, sure, we can get political and you can do activism and engage in many things, but ultimately, you don't have that much control over what's happening at the level of laws and at the level of government. So that's sort of like that higher level distal stressors. And then we have the more proximal stressors, which are the ones that we have more control over, but they're still difficult, and they're in our everyday lives. So we meet a new person and we have to come out to them, and we have to gauge their reaction, or we have to work through the anxiety that we might feel. Or somebody may not want to be our friends because of our sexuality or gender identity, or somebody may not want to go on a date with us, right? Or we may encounter all kinds of stressors at that more interpersonal level. So what I was earlier describing as two levels of stress now becomes almost like three levels, right? The stress that we all have for sort of being alive on this planet, the sort of distal stressors that we have for being part of certain communities that tend to be targeted and marginalized in a structural way, and then the more proximal stressors that also have to do with having that identity and disclosing or showing that identity to other people. So very complex.
Yeah.
And I'm just gonna take a step back from that so that this doesn't turn into like psych,
Yeah,
101
no.
lecture, but happy to take more questions.
That's great. No, thank you. And what I take away is just these multiple layers, and that some of these layers are in our consciousness and our perception, and then some of them are just the shit that happens, right? And the stuff that is objectively harder for us because we aren't as safe, and we have to deal with other things that are just facts. So great. So good. So now we can all pretend to be experts on the psychology of minority stress in any forums that we want to be in. So I think everybody watching wants to get to know like just you guys. So I'm going to really, when I think about the life experiences that we have here, part of what I want to do is just unpack a little of that and let you guys share some of your life experiences. And you've all done amazing things. So my guess is stress has pushed you to do some of these things. But I also imagine that you guys have had times when you've felt like stress has held you back. So maybe just talk a little bit about, Emil, I'm going to start with you, just, all the things you've kind of progressed through in your life, and how has your relationship with stress kind of evolved?
So I have like a very weird relationship with stress, because I think that stress has been good in many ways to push me to become an activist, to push me to, come out at a very early age, because it was too stressful for me to be in the closet. I found that people asking me like, oh, how's your girlfriend? Or why don't you have a girlfriend? And it just was like driving me crazy. And so then my mother kind of pushed me over the edge, because she wanted to know why I wasn't dating Tyra Banks. And that was like, I was like, okay, I'm gay. I don't, I like men, and I'm never going to be with Tyra Banks. But so I think of stuff like that, right? I think with work, stress is good because I'm super creative, but I'm also really like cerebral and in my head. So sometimes I get too in my head and it's kind of not great because it'll kind of slow down my creative process. But then also there's something about the adrenaline that I get when it is last minute and that kind of stress that makes it more exciting and more creative to me. So those are just some of the ways that stress kind of exists in my life.
Yeah. And what has it held you back? And like, do you feel like it's sometimes undermined you?
I don't know if I've had it undermine me. I mean, I think probably the biggest period was my mom died 3 years ago, and it was like we had become really close after I came out, after years of therapy, and that was tough because that was a stress that I didn't know how to manage. Like, it's just kind of this feeling that comes over you. And so my therapist was like, don't push away from the grief, lean into the grief, because almost pushing away from it made it worse for me. So he's like, some days you just need to sit in the bed and eat Chinese food and watch Netflix and be okay with it.
Yeah.
So I think as I've gotten older, I've learned to lean into the stress versus to resisting.
Yeah. So I'm going to pass it to Corey. I'm same question really, like your life kind of, your narrative in life and just how you've evolved in your own self. How has stress been, a partner to you in that journey?
Sure. Yeah. I started, when I transitioned, I had to go through therapy, which is a requirement, but I restarted recently. And when I was going through therapy in my transition in high school, my therapist had said to me, it's only going to get harder after you transition because most people don't transition in the way they want to. And so our work will really begin then. And for me, it was the opposite. And I was a case she had never really seen before. One, I was the youngest she had ever seen. No one was really taking transgender children or teenagers at the time. And when I got to college, I decided to live stealth. And that means I did not disclose to anyone that I was transgender for my own personal safety and wanting to feel like every other girl, feel normal. And I actually hadn't even had gender affirming surgery until after my freshman year of college. But so there was such a risk my freshman year with the roommate and boys finding out or anyone finding out or a slip of a skirt. I mean, you never know. And so that was stressful in itself. And I harbored a ton of pent up subconscious anger towards the world because I felt like I couldn't be myself. And I was not a very nice person in college. I wasn't really when I transitioned in high school either. Not that I wasn't a good person, but I was very quick to be mean or fight back or get angry. And when I went to study abroad my junior year of college in Amsterdam, I met other trans people and had to write this research paper on the difference of transitioning between the Netherlands and the US. And I realized for the first time ever, oh my God, not why me? Why was I trapped in the wrong body? But I'm in the right body, at the right place, in the right time because I need to do something with this. And I was still stealth for the next year and a half or 2 years, but I knew that there was something I could do with the fact that I would be in the room while people were talking trash about Caitlyn Jenner and not knowing that I was transgender myself. And so I took all this anger and I harbored it into a blog post. And when I came out to that blog post, it was finally a sense of relief because I could combine my world of like introducing my high school friends to my college friends. And that's when I really started to work on like myself. And when I went back into therapy, my therapist basically said to me, you went through trauma, one, by just being a person of LGBTQ in the LGBTQ community, being Jewish, having generational trauma passed down, but also knowing I was trans and having to have a bar mitzvah, knowing I was trans and then transitioning in front of my high school, knowing I was trans and keeping it a secret in college. And we basically have discussed recently that a ton of my stress and a ton of my mental health issues have stemmed from actually not disclosing and not being truthful because I couldn't be myself. And so that's what I've been working on recently is one, how to get back to a state of not being so subconsciously angry at the world for not being more accepting and not being more educated, and instead educate others and use my personal life as my career to let people know that there are ways that you can be happy and successful and lead a positive lifestyle while being transgender. And even though it is so important for us to continue to tell the stories and highlight stories of trauma and abuse and trials and tribulations of trans people, we also need that positive aspect as well.
Yep.
So I also bring a ton of stress to my life because I'm putting my personal life as my career. And my journey has been trying to find that balance of what do I share and what do I not, but wanting to at the same time give my all, because I just want everyone to be as educated as possible about at least my experiences and take something away from that and think, okay, I can think of a trans person differently now because I've heard one experience. What else can I find out?
Right.
So there's a lot there because I don't necessarily always know how to manage that. And I think therapy and supplements and yoga, there are so many things that we can do now, that crystals even, that help us, get on a track to being more sound-minded within ourselves.
So that whole topic of concealed identity, I guess, is the technical term for it. But that I relate to that as well, because I came out very late in life, and that's a recipe for stress all by itself. So
Absolutely.
I'm there. So Jade, I wanted to ask the same question to you. So maybe you could just tell us a little bit about your kind of personal journey and how you think stress has kind of been your partner in crime, or maybe your frenemy. I don't know. Tell me.
Yeah, it's funny because I feel like stress and the IRS are probably like my biggest motivators to just like in life, to make it a long story short, I grew up in a kind of an emotionless household. So a lot of my stress came from knowing that I couldn't really get the support that I needed from my parents. So I was like stressed out because of that, but I was also kind of figuring out for myself how I could just make myself feel better. And so now at 28, I'm really good at helping myself, but I know that I will be less stressed if I just sought out help. And I would say that, it's funny because my sexuality, I came out when I was 19, and I came out because similar to Emil, like I was just stressed. I got tired of lying to my parents. I'm not going to my friend's house. She's not a friend. I just got tired of like trying to hide everything. And so I was just like, I'm just too inconvenienced. So I'm just going to come out. So it's a similar story with that. But I felt most of my stress, and this is actually the most consistent thing throughout my childhood into my adulthood. More of my stress comes from the fact that I might kind of wear my sexuality on my sleeve. When people see me, they kind of assume my sexuality. And to give you like a brief story, I had to get a bathing suit like last week. And so I'm in the store and I asked the lady, I'm like, hey, I'm looking for a one piece, like a real simple, just like wang dang doodle. And so she took me to the section, and so I'm like looking, and it's like the women's section, like the men's section is like right next to it. And so I'm looking and stuff, and there's about 3 women who are looking at me as if like I'm bleeding from my eyeballs, like just these stares. And it's a specific kind of stare. It's kind of like when a kid is staring at you, and you can kind of tell that the kid doesn't know what your gender is, and they're trying to figure you out. You know what I mean? Just like that weird kind of kid stare analysis that happens. It was that, but with the people around me. And so most of my stress just comes from, I don't know how people are going to react to me most of the time. And I've lived on the East Coast, I've lived on the West Coast, and I do feel more comfortable on the West Coast. I feel a little less stress walking about, just being in public here compared to the East Coast, because I do feel that, it was more of a thought it was more of a thought when I would leave my house. I would think about, am I attracting too much attention to myself? But now, and I think that it comes from just growing up and then also just experiencing life and realizing that, especially with everything going on, that life is short and you got to make it mean something and you have to live it authentically. And so now, I do have those moments where I'm like, I don't know if I want to wear these shorts, but it's more, I'm just kind of looking at my greater purpose. And that's not to live my life within the comforts of everyone else.
Right.
And, with this business that I've started in the last couple months, the stress of it failing, the stress of me not being able to pay my rent, or, just the regular stress of life. That's why I feel that's why I said stress and the IRS is kind of like those things that are like always like right here and right here that are pushing me to do my best.
Right.
So I actually need to learn how to manage stress better, because I think I lean too far into it. And I do, I let the stress control my actions. Whereas even though stress is going to be a part of pretty much everything that I do in life, I need to, make sure that I'm taking care of myself and doing things because I want to do them, and doing things that are restorative. Rather than just having stress be the reason why I wake up in the morning. I don't want to feel that, because I feel stress. I don't know about anyone else here, but I feel stress physically more than anything else. I lose weight. I don't eat. Like my appetite changes. And so it's a really physical thing for me. And I went through a pretty abusive 5-year relationship. And I think that the lesson that I learned from that is, one, stress is a bigger beast than I think we think it is. I think it's insidious. And after getting out of that relationship, I'm attempting to, actually look at the stress in my life and attack it in an active way rather than retroactively. So it's definitely a part of my everyday life, and more so a bigger part of it than it needs to be. That's part of the reason why I'm here today, is to hear from all of you guys what you guys do, but also, trying to find the healthy medium.
We're gonna go there next. But before we do, I want to ask Amelia just, your story as well. Growing up in Argentina and coming to the U.S. and I have no idea what. Well, I do know that academia is filled with lots of judgment. So I bet that's been a big part of your story too.
Judgment is around the corner for all of us, right? No matter what we do and what environments we put ourselves in, it almost feels like there's always somebody waiting to be judgmental.
Yeah.
And then there's our internalized judgment as well, right? So what we think other people are thinking, or our own projections of what we think we should be doing or feeling or saying, and sort of how we drive ourselves to the ground with that kind of stuff. But yeah, my story, it's a little bit more, it's pretty simple. I came out in college. So, I've been in the US for most of my adult life. I came here when I was 18, and I think much like you guys were saying, it was kind of like a moment of saying, I don't want to hide this anymore. It's just too stressful to keep up with trying to convince other people that I'm somebody who I'm not, and also to convince myself, because I think that's the tricky part with this whole issue of concealed identity. We start off by saying, okay, I'm going to hide it from others, but we end up then hiding things from ourselves. And I think that's what ends up actually eating us from the inside. Though I don't think that the lying to others doesn't cause that much damage. Than the lying to ourselves, I think. So yeah, that was pretty much. And actually, I've been in academic circles and fairly liberal circles, and I live in New York, so I don't necessarily, fortunately, have had many negative experiences of that sort. But then there's something that I've been thinking about a lot recently, and I went to college 1,000 years ago, quite old, and not seriously, like the very, very early 2000s. So a good 20 years ago, and it's been really interesting to see over the years. So again, I've been out of school for a very long time, to see how many of my friends at the time, who I assumed were straight and cis, have come out over the years as being gay and bi and trans and all kinds of other things. And I think it's also part of it, and it's something that I experienced with a lot of, it's a very bittersweet experience for me. On the one hand, I'm excited that more and more of them are coming out over the years, and obviously kids in college now, they're, the proportion of them who are coming out is way higher, right, than it was 20 years ago when I was in school. So that's obviously very encouraging and very exciting. But then looking back in my experience, when it was a handful of us, in many ways and in many circles. And that was quite isolating. And if I went to college today, it would probably be and I love my college experience, but it would have been a much better experience even, right? Yeah. And I don't know if that happens to you guys as well. It's great that people are coming up. I'm like, why are you coming up now and not 20 years ago when we were all in college together? We could have had a bigger circle of friends, right? And things to do and things to push for and to fight for and to have fun with. So that's kind of what I've been reflecting about. And I think the reason for that is because everybody has their own timing. I think there's two issues, right? There's a political timing that things get better and more open as time goes by, inevitably, obviously. Yep. In some places more than others. And then it's our own personal timeline that sometimes we're not ready and we do need to wait a few months or a few years or sometimes decades. And sometimes it's, the right timing is the timing that's right for you.
Yeah, that's right. So I want to just talk a little bit more about like what we all just kind of figured out works for us. What works in terms of helping keep balance and in your life. And Emil, you and I had talked a little bit when we met about self-care and just that word, I don't know exactly what it means, because I think everyone thinks about it slightly differently. Yes. But I would love to know what that means to you, and what are your go-to, firstly, like how do you know when you're in that place where you need to binge watch Netflix or whatever it is that you need to do? Like, how do you, what are those moments, and what do you do to help yourself?
Well, we had a conversation about how I'm really I think self-care is so important. And when I think of self-care, I think it's, when do you stop and take care of yourself when you don't feel centered, when you feel off, when you feel like you need to be nurtured or you're tired? And I'm kind of like a workaholic personality. So I'm constantly thinking of new ideas and things I want to do. And I have like all these Post-its with all these things to do. And it drives me crazy because I don't cross the things off on the Post-it. So then it's like there's not a feeling of accomplishment. But what I've been doing in quarantine, which has been really helpful, was kind of like, okay, I'll work until say 6 and then I stop. And then I'm like, transition to like, it's nighttime. So I'm going to cook dinner. What am I going to cook for dinner? And like really getting into it, like doing a cooking class with my best friend. He's upstate with his husband and his 2 kids. So we'll cook the same recipe and then eat it together with the family, because we used to do that in the city together. So I try to do things like that. And then the other things about when do I need to shut down, like definitely like one day of the weekend, I don't do anything. I am fine to sleep 12 hours. I'm fine to just lay in bed and binge on Netflix or whatever and just talk on the phone and just chill. I think it's those things. I definitely, when I feel tired and stressful, especially when the protests started, I realized I needed to up my meditation practice because the stress was rising so much that I was like, well, then you need more meditation. Like you need to raise your own vibration. So I started meditating like twice a day. Now I'm probably up to 3 times a day. And I used to just do in the morning and I was good. So it's just things like that, like kind of being in tune with my mind, body, and spirit of what do I need to support myself right now versus being a victim. Yeah.
Yeah, I wish I could meditate. I've tried so many times, and I can maybe for like, it just, but what I have learned through R3SET actually is just the breathing part of, and that's easy. Anyone can do that. And I find that, that just takes my heart rate way down. And it just helps me in the middle of the day, it helps me in the middle of the night, whenever it is. It's like the simplest thing I think anyone can do.
Yeah, and they say a lot of times that we kind of forget to breathe, right? Like
Oh yeah,
very shallow breathing. And it's
right,
like, if we just take a second and even 4 deep breaths in and out, it will change your vibration.
right. Well, the way it was explained to me is, when we're feeling anxious, we tend to inhale.
Mhm.
And when we're feeling calm, we kind of make that noise. And so if you're constantly just feeling like you're slightly, under pressure, you're always just kind of holding in. And it feels good sometimes just to just take a pause and do that. So we've started to do this. I think we need to do more of it in our company, but we have done breathing exercises at the beginning of meetings. And I think it's great. Like if nothing else, I think it puts everyone in the moment of being in the meeting. And if it helps to do more than that, that's even better. But I do like that. It seems like a really simple thing. So Corey, you've got the crystals in your hand, but would love to know other things in your practice of living that you do to, give yourself that kind of break and that self-care, self-love, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, it's another thing I'm working through in therapy, is like when to schedule break time for myself, and because my career is now so social media focused, it's hard to, like, most people's downtime is TikTok or any form of social media, and mine is not. So it's like I stress myself out over that. So I've been a big fan of mantras since probably college. A lot of ones that I repeat to myself quite often are "This too shall pass," and a recent one the past maybe like 3 years is "It gets better," or "It will get better." Kind of goes hand in hand with "This too shall pass." Very recently, since the riots have started, a friend had said to me, the Serenity Prayer had really been something for him that's been helping him through, and I downloaded one as a background, and that has helped me as well. And also breathing. My mom always tells me, like, Corey, just breathe or take deep breaths, and I love the number 3. It's my lucky number, so for me it's in threes. So I'll take 3 deep breaths or 6 deep breaths or 9 deep breaths, however many I need to, like, center myself. 10, I can go off 3 sometimes. So I try to just remember to, like, center myself and come into the moment. And my times to really, really de-stress, where I'm, like, purposely doing it, sorry for the sirens, I live near a fire station, is in the shower. I do it's probably why I take so long in the shower, unfortunately, is that's my time to de-stress and to just kind of let go of my daily activity. And then also working out. Working out for me, I can really just, like, be in my element and focus on movement in my body, whether that's a circuit workout or yoga, and then stretching out afterwards. Like, that's my time to kind of go blank, and I'll be thinking, but I'm not really thinking. And so it's those kind of small practices throughout the day that helps me. And then also, I am big on crystals. I have been taking R3SET. It's, like, on my desk. I don't know if you can see the bottle right there.
Yep.
And I have been really enjoying it. And I think that it's not just one thing. Like, there are so many different things that can work for so many different people. And for me, one thing isn't going to just work. I do need multiple different things throughout the day.
Yep.
But I do think something that I am trying to work on most is that time. Like, when am I working? When am I breaking? I love that idea, Emil, of I'm done at 6. That's my time to make dinner and relax. Like, I think that's actually something I might start implementing. Is I also like to wake up late, so maybe it's like 7 or 8. But yeah, I think we all can work on new practices and just tiny small things throughout the day that can help us, de-stress.
So Jade, I'm going to pass it to you. You're also an introvert, you told me, and I'm an introvert, and we talked a little bit about how while the rest of you guys are talking, we're watching and learning and observing and coming up with funny things. But is comedy part of how I'm just so curious, like when you're making people laugh and you're on stage and you're in that moment, are you stressed, or is that a release? Like that, is that when you're in your most like de-stressed world?
It's it is I mean, if it's going well.
Right. That would be,
Yes.
yeah.
If everyone's like,
yeah.
yeah. If they're laughing as well, then yes, it's definitely a release. There's something very therapeutic to me about making people laugh. I don't know what it is. It's that, because it's very transactional. Like you say the thing and then they laugh. You say the thing and then they laugh. So maybe it's the instant gratification that is what makes it so comforting too. But yeah, comedy is definitely something that is a big part of my self-care. I love watching stand-ups like on Netflix. I'll just like go to the stand-up tab and I'll just let them run all day. Because laughing itself to me is a form of self-care. And like Corey, like I have to self-care every single day because I know me, and it's going to be hard for me to have a day where I completely don't do anything. Like that's, especially when, because my to-do list is always at like the forefront of my mind. And so if I can see my laptop right there, if I can see my desk right there, it's so easy for me to just like walk on over and just get started on that to-do list, even though I know that this is my time to, you know, to stretch, which is something that I also do as my self-care.
Okay.
So yeah, comedy is definitely a big part of it. And then it's also, I don't know how to speak without some form of light or some form of humor in what I'm saying. I feel like it helps me actually get my message across. And then if people are also kind of receptive to that, then I feel like the conversation, you can actually get to like the core of that conversation. But comedy is definitely a big part of it. Stretching is definitely something that I do. Working out, I don't like it, but I like that there's an hour where I don't, because it's hard to work out and think about work at the same time. It's damn near impossible. So I like to go work out, and I do have a trainer. And so I don't even have to think about what I'm going to do. Like she just tells me what to do. And so it's been really dope to find these different activities that, number one, take my mind away from work, take my mind away from all the things that I would normally be stressed about. But it's also something that's good for me at the same time. You know, like I love to shop. That's good for me, not good for the checking and savings accounts though. You know what I mean? It's like I would prefer, you know, for my self-care to be something that is good for me and, you know, that relieves stress at the same time. And something else that I do to help with stress relief, which is also one of those things that is a stress relief, but also helps me creatively. I live in a state where it's legal, so I partake in cannabis, CBD, all of that good stuff. It's great for me. So, you know, that's something that I partake into, and I truly do treat it recreationally, where, you know, I'll work from 8:30 to 4:35, and then you know, like my girlfriend will get home from work, and that's like my time to chill. And it's funny because I also tried to meditate and I'm just garbage at it. And I was like, well, what if because when you smoke, regardless of whatever it is that you are smoking, it's breathing, you know, it's heavy in and out breathing. Right. And so I was like, let me just try it. And in a weird way, because as I exhale, I'm like, in my head, I'm like, let it go, like very Gandhi. And it actually does really help, because I notice when I'm done for the rest of the day, I'm zen, I'm good. Like I'm calm, my mind isn't going a mile a minute. And so it's also been something that's been really beneficial for me. So that's kind of in a nutshell what I do.
That's good. So Amelia, as somebody who everybody's coming to you with their problems, and you know, all day long, and you've got to do that, but that what do you do when you've got, you're the one who's got the stress and you've got the anxiety to work through? What are the things you do, or who helps you, or how does that work?
You guys will tell me here in the panels. But no, so yeah, what I do is I like working out. I actually I'm a bit of a gym rat, if you will. So I've been pretty sad that I can't go to the gym anymore. So I've been getting very creative with various options. I took up running over the quarantine. I do not like running. I will stop running as soon as this is over. It's not good for my knees. Not that fun, but yeah, I like working out in general, going to the gym. I like playing soccer, tennis, sort of doing all the things I can't do right now. So yeah, so I've been doing that, and the idea of taking time during the day and taking sort of like meaningful and mindful breaks, I think that's really useful for all of us. I have friends of mine who are therapists and have back-to-back sessions. Occasionally I do, but I try to create some buffer time just so that I can decompress a little bit and refocus before going into my next appointment. So yeah, it's like trying that stuff. And the thing that I've been doing too, so I'm a parent, so I have kids at home and I'm trying to work, and so that's my partner. So things are very fun in our household, to say the least. So one of the things too that I've been trying to do, and I've been telling this to a lot of my clients and friends and anyone who will listen, is, and I think I actually tweeted about it today too, it's like to really cut down on the number of things we're doing. There's this notion right now that because we are home and we don't spend time on our commutes and we're sort of more isolated and not spending as much time with people, like that we have all this extra time to do all these extra things, and we don't. We are busy. And when we are not busy, we're stressed because we are dealing with a pandemic, right? And there's a million things going on. So I've been trying to do this thing of sort of writing out all the things I have to do every week and then cutting down 10%. Sometimes it's a random 10%. Sometimes it's based on priority, because obviously I don't want to cut down on the most important stuff. And I was never someone to cut down on things. I was always one of, and hope to go back one day to be that person who's like, okay, great, what else are we doing? And what can we add? But right now, I think this is a time where I think wisdom right now comes with saying no, in a way that is purposeful and intentional, because we have a lot going on. Whether we are alone and we're navigating dating in the pandemic, whether we're stuck at home with kids, whether we have family members who are older or who need our help, or simply just because we are trying to figure out what's going on in the world. I mean, that in itself right now is just adding so much mental clutter, that it's just like more important than ever that we sort of say no to things. And I know I'm going to be watching this one day in the future and be like, Amelia, you can't tell people to do fewer things. But for now, that's my answer, and I'm sticking to it.
I agree. I totally agree. I think this is not the time to develop 3 new hobbies. I think it's crazy. It's not fair when there's so many things we got to work through. At least that's my view. So we had a question from the audience about the fact that we are all so different, and yet we're talking about kind of LGBTQ stress as if it's one thing, but we're all so different. And I'm just curious, as we've listened to each other today, do we feel like we're more the same than we are different in this particular context of stress? Or do we feel like everyone's in such a different world that our stress relationship is very different? Anyone have a thought on that?
I think it's all different. I think everyone deals and manages with stress differently and has different types of stress. I think one thing that's been very interesting for me during this, I've already always FaceTime my friends. I have a couple best friends that I'm literally on FaceTime with, just if it's white noise for the both of us, we're just on the computer together. And friends for me have been a solace, have been my rock in general in life, but also during this time. And it's very interesting that we can feel the same type of stress, but we also are stressed with other things like apartment or roommate or the ability to not work out, a relationship, or whatever it is. Like, we have different stresses, period. We have different stresses because of the pandemic, and we all have the same stress because of the pandemic. And then, of course, like, for me and my friends who are quite, thank God, progressive people. I mean, of course, if they're friends with me at this point, but who care so deeply about the Black Lives Matter movement and defunding the police and re-evaluating our culture and our society and systemic racism. Like, I think there's a new stress of just like, what can we do while being sensitive? And so that's like very interesting. I found is like, we all are stressed in different ways, but there are common things that we can be stressed about together. So, and I think a way to manage that is by talking with your friends or family members or whomever it is, loved ones, about it in an open, honest conversation.
Yeah. Well, that was kind of where I wanted to go, just as a kind of concluding thought is, you know, for people who are listening, who might not be in the community itself, but who, you know, want to be supportive and want to be helpful and want to, you know, kind of I guess, listen better. You know, what would you say to someone, you know, to help them understand how, you know, stress in our lives might be even more amplified? And, you know, we're not looking for pity, but we're looking for empathy. So, you know, what would an ask be of an ally when they're thinking about why you might be feeling stress in a more profound way?
I think one of the things, and I was practicing this before the pandemic, is that sometimes with allies, I think they are so conditioned to kind of be in a privileged place and in a place of power, and they are used to systems that where they're the number one center of the universe. And I always tell them to get comfortable with discomfort. Like, yes, learning someone's pronouns or using the proper pronouns might be uncomfortable for you, but that's the way of the world now. And it doesn't, like, I don't care that it makes you feel uncomfortable, and it's not okay for you to misgender people or to just say kind of racist things and think like, oh, it's okay. It's like, it's not okay. And I think that we're in this place in the world right now where everyone has to be uncomfortable, has to get comfortable being uncomfortable.
I feel that people should also just be explicit. Like, there are people who will text me and be like, hey, I want to make this post. Can you read through it and make sure I'm not saying something problematic? And there's something very therapeutic about saying, no, you need to just Google it, read some other posts by people that are trying to do the same thing that you're doing. And, you know, I think a part of being an ally is reading and doing the work, and listening, absorbing, you know, perspectives of your friends and that type of thing. I think that is important as well. However, your friends and people who are in these communities that are being targeted, we do have a different level of stress. And so, do we necessarily want to do how to not be offensive 101 with you right now in iMessage? No, we don't. I mean, there are some that do. And there are times when I'm like, yeah, I have time today. But being part of that discomfort is like knowing that you might not know where to start. You might not know what to Google. You might not know, you know, where do I begin with trying to, you know, become the ally that I want to be. But that is also something that is on you, because one thing that I think this whole movement has done has forced people to kind of figure out what their role is going to be. Like, there are people who are choosing to be leaders. There are people who are choosing to be educators. There are people who are choosing to, you know, dedicate their platforms to uplifting other people. And so, you know, everyone is choosing their role. If you've chosen the role of allyship, you need to accept everything, you know, that comes with that. And so when I talk to allies, you know, that's something that I say. It's not necessarily like, this isn't a job that you take for the high five. It's the job you take because you want to be this person, because you want to be a source of support for these communities. And I think that that's part of the conversation that's missing, is that like it's beyond everything you're doing. It's almost like when you start working out for the first time, and then you're pretty much just working out. So you're crossing out, okay, I need to do this. I need to do this. I'll work out Tuesday and Thursdays. Okay, boom. Like there's a difference between that and someone who has made fitness a part of their lifestyle. Like it's less of something it's less of a checklist and more of, well, this is just what I feel like I'm supposed to do, or this is what I feel like I'm called to do. Yeah, and that's my long-winded.
Yeah, I want to add to that, like, especially because I can speak from the trans experience. A lot of people feel like, oh, well, I have a trans friend. It's like how a lot of people say, like, I'm not racist, I have a Black friend, right? It's like the most ridiculous thing you could ever hear. And so a lot of people feel like, oh, well, I'm good. I have a trans friend, or I've been to the chapel and the Abbey and in West Hollywood, so I'm covered. But it's going more than that. It's going more than just messaging me, being like, hey, what do you think about their, like you said, about pronouns? It's like, it's not my opinion. It doesn't matter about my opinion of someone's pronouns. It's like, you need to do the work, because that's what makes that person feel better. My mom says all the time, like, she helps families whose children are transitioning, and it's called like get comfortable being uncomfortable. And that's exactly it. Like we have to have these uncomfortable conversations. And again, like kind of what Jade's saying, like not with our friends who are like-minded, but with people who are not like-minded. And we need to open up these conversations with all types of movement. But with being transgender, like, don't come and ask me if I get my period. Don't come and ask me if I can give birth. Don't ask me how I have a vagina. Like, do that research on your own. It's not my responsibility, nor is it any trans person's responsibility to educate you on that. It's up to you to get on the Google machine and figure it out for yourself, because there's a world of information out there. And it's not my job, in my personal life at least, when I'm in a public setting or anything like that, to humor you or to let you know why my vagina looks so good. You know what I mean? It's just, it's the name of the game. You have to like educate yourself and get on it. And that's how we can be and do better, is by making sure that we push ourselves and push our friends and family who need that push.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So we are coming up to the end, and I just want to thank everybody. This felt like about 2 minutes to me, but I really, really appreciated just getting to know all of you. So I hope we stay connected in some weird way, or maybe even a big way. So I just want to thank you, and I just want to thank everybody for listening in. Let's cogitate, ruminate, and let's figure out how to make the world maybe a little less stressful. So with that, thank you very much, and look forward to our next webinar in a few weeks. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you so much. Bye. Thank you.